All right, good afternoon and welcome to John Box Watercolor. Today we're going to be painting a scene from Lviv, Ukraine, but before we get started, if you wouldn't mind giving this video a thumbs up, and if you like what you see, consider subscribing. All of these demos are for sale in my store, the link for which is in the description. So I'm going to go ahead and put our reference photo over here on the right side of the screen so you all can take a look. I've kept my sketch pretty true to form. I did kind of rearrange the car here and scoot it over, and I added another one as well. And I did add some folks under this umbrella here, but everything else is pretty much going to stay in line with that reference photo. This side of the building, or I should say this side of the paper, is going to be mostly in direct light. We're going to have light coming from right to left. This side of our building here is going to be in shadow. And then we're going to kind of play with some things down here. But other than that, let's go ahead and get started. I've already got my palette wet, but I'm going to go ahead and spray my paper here. And really the goal for this painting, I want to keep it pretty bright and sunny so that we can use those areas where we've got a lot of light to create some dark contrast with shadows, figures, that sort of thing. So let's get going with our sky. I'm going to keep our sky pretty simple. I'm going to grab a little cobalt, a little touch of cerulean there. And I don't think I'm going to add any clouds today. I think I just want to keep it nice and clean and blue. Okay. Just adding a little bit more pigment there. And I'm going to be careful as I work my way down, because since our buildings on the left side and our buildings back in the distance are in direct sunlight, I'm going to want to paint those on our first wash here so that they maintain their kind of luminosity. I'm going to be very careful here. That looks nice. Give that a spray. I may have put a little bit too much pigment on this sky. I always want to retain my light, but I think we'll be okay. Again, just working my way down. Okay, something about like that. All right, perfect. Okay, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a paper towel, and I just want to dry these areas where you can see the water has run down and we've got a really heavy bead there. I don't want to, you'll notice that if I were to leave that, when I start working in the light colors of these buildings, that blue wash would sort of pull down, and I don't necessarily want that. So I'm just gonna absorb some of that water. We still may get a little bit of that bleeding, but we shouldn't get nearly as much. All right. Let's get our yellow going here. I want to mix up a warm color. I've got a little yellow ochre. I have some Mayan Orange in here from another painting, but I'm just going to let it all mix together. I'm not too concerned about that. All right, and let's just make a mark. I think that looks pretty good. And something important that you want to be doing here is where we've got windows, I want to try to leave some white on this paper. Anytime you've got something in the light, we always aim to paint it on the first wash, but once we've done our first wash, we can't go any lighter. So if you want to have some highlights and things, you've got to leave a little bit of that white paper from the very beginning. All right, and I'm keeping it pretty much one tone over here and one color. I don't have a whole lot going on. I'm going to leave some white areas down here as well. Okay. I've had a little bit of that sky just bleed in there. I'm going to take and just touch the tops there. All right. Now I'm going to paint around this umbrella because I've got a little bit of a problem here. Something I talk about in watercolor a lot is contrast, and I've got an umbrella that's in light and a building that's in light as well. I could paint the umbrella a slightly different color, but it would end up being the same tone. And tones are where you get that contrast that we're looking for. And so in order to get maybe something a little bit stronger of an impression, I'm going to make the decision to cut around that. Obviously, that umbrella is not completely white, but again, as an artist, we kind of have to make decisions that are going to either help our painting or hurt our painting, and sometimes we kind of have to ignore our reference photo or what might be correct. We've got to kind of figure things out. All right, now this building's not going to matter. I just kept it all the same, but that's going to be in shadow. Now, I'm going to grab some pure pigment. I'm going to give this a spray. And I just want to have a little bit of maybe something darker over here, just in a few spots, maybe at the tops of these windows, just while this is still wet. I want to add a little bit of interest. I'm going to darken it up because, as you can see, it's already spread out there on the paper. You can hardly see that I've done anything. So let's try that again. It's a little thicker there. Again, just a few little spots just to break up that big shape. Definitely could warm that up. Okay. A few little spots. Okay. All right. I think that looks pretty good. Let's give this another spray, and let's keep working down our paper here. Now, I'm going to do the same thing that I talked about with the umbrella with our cars here. I want those windshields and the sides of the car to be in direct light, and so I'm going to cut around them like that, just to help give us that very vibrant effect. That there's a lot of light there. Okay. I just pull through here. Not worried about a whole lot. Okay. Let's give it a spray. And we're going to, let's cool our ground down slightly, just because everything we've done so far has been very warm. Just touching between that cobalt and cerulean. And as always, as I get towards the bottom, I'm going to darken things up. And again, you can see that's very cool, but this thing's going to dry so much lighter that it's not really going to matter. It kind of adds a little interest, I think. All right. Let's see. Take one last look here. Is there anything I want to dab out or add to while the paper's still wet? And, I don't think so. I think it looks okay. I am wondering, though, I'm just taking a look at this figure over here. This is something I'll have to figure out on our second wash if I want to brush them in very dark or then try to leave them light. I think we're going to go dark, but anyways, I'm going to let this dry. We'll come back and we'll work on our second wash. All right, we are back. This is now completely dry, and we're going to get started on our second wash. As always, I'm going to start with our objects that are furthest away and then move closer and closer to our subject. What I'm doing here is I'm mixing up sort of a cool-ish color for our cap of this building back here. And I purposely left a lot of that cap white from the first wash to help try and lighten this. Let some of that white shine through there. All right, I'm going to grab a little bit of a darker color here. I always like to have, the tops of towers and antennas and things kind of bleed down into the body of whatever's been painted. All right, that looks nice. I may come back and soften the bottom edge of that tower, or the bottom edge of this roof a little bit, just because it is a bit further in the distance. Okay, and we'll leave that be for now. I may come back. Let's work on our roof line here for the top of this building. I want to darken it up, all right, because there should be a shadow or something underneath this. Let's just come right along the top there. I'm going to take my smaller brush, work in some antennas and things. All I'm doing here is I'm almost just decorating that top line. You'll see I'm not doing a big straight line for the roof. I'm leaving little gaps of light so that the viewer can kind of infer that there might be windows up there, other little antennas and clotheslines, all sorts of things. Now I do want to mix up some type of a shadow color though to have underneath it. Something a little lighter. Let's see. Yeah, something like that. I think that looks nice, and I'm going to leave it alone. When we've got a building in light, you really want to have some heavy contrast, so go darker than you think. Now we're going to work these windows. And I'm going to keep them pretty thin here. Again, just trying to keep it nice and dark and clean. Anytime you've got something in the sunlight, you really want to work on keeping it clean. Very, I guess what we would say, very just hard lines. Okay. All right, that looks pretty good. I'm going to throw a couple little, maybe just a window or two back here. You'll notice just a touch lighter because it is in the distance. Maybe a roof or something here as well. Just trying to keep it loose. I'm not going to paint every single window back there. I'm going to leave a lot of this kind of open. Just mixing up some dark warm paint. Just want to get a few more touches over here. And again, I mentioned it's got to be clean and sharp. I cannot overdo that. All right, I'm going to leave that alone. Do a couple down here. Maybe just a little dry brush line here. Okay. All right. So we've got this light side. I'm fairly happy with it. Let's move over to our shadow side. All right, now I want to keep it on the warmer side because I think the shadow that it casts onto the street, we're going to really cool down. So let's see how this looks. And again, I can't reiterate enough. You need to go darker than you think. If it looks good when you put it on the paper, it is too light. I'm just putting in some of that burnt sienna there for a roof. And now we're going to start getting really dark. The other thing is I'm still going to be leaving those gaps of light. Right? I want to try to break this shape up as much as possible. And I'm probably going to leave a good bit of those kind of areas where you can see where it almost looks speckled there. I'm going to be leaving a lot of that just to help break the shape up. I'm going to spray this paper, get it nice and wet. I'm going to grab a bit of just pure water here, and I'm going to take and drag it in over the top of that umbrella. This kind of misting effect on the back side of this building will help create some distance in what we're painting. All right, still working here. I'm going to do a darker Kind of maybe a bluish top for that building there. All right, I'm going to grab my flat brush, right into some neutral tint. And this is neutral tint, and these are two Joseph Z grays. Grab some more burnt sienna, a little yellow ochre, cobalt, cerulean, and we're just going for it here. I'm just trying to darken all this up. All right. We're getting there. All right. Now, we're going to have to start to work in our shadow here. Now, this is going to be key for our cityscape here. And I'm just drawing a rough outline of where I want those shadows to be. I think something like that looks pretty good. I want to have a good portion of this bottom of our page in shadow. I think it's going to create, it helps kind of frame up our painting. I'm going to give this a spray again, keeping everything alive. And I'm also going to give a kind of heavy spray here. And that'll create a nice effect when we get down there for our shadow. Now I'm going to pick up a lot of pigment for this. This has got to get very, very dark. Yep. Okay. I'm just going to work this shadow. Right like that. And don't be afraid to throw a little color in your shadows as well. I want to sharpen these up a bit. Okay, it's starting to come along. We give this another spray. I want to darken those buildings on the left. Right, again, I'm always thinking contrast here. And while I think our shadows look really nice, we definitely could darken these guys up a little bit. So I'm just going to pull some lines. Dark to help frame that umbrella there. Okay. All right. I think that looks pretty good. Give another spray, keep everything alive. Let's keep working around here. I want to add a little bit of dark under this roof line here, just to kind of simulate a shadow. I'm going to add a little bit of dark there as well. Okay. So far, so good. And again, always looking for contrast. Always, always, always. The biggest mistake I see new artists make is they go too light and they get this sort of washed out look. Do not be afraid to just use a little water and just really dip into those pails and just go for it. All right, let's start working on the fun parts, our cars and our people here. Let's do, who to work on first? All right, I'm going to pick up some white paint here. I'm just going straight in. Again, I'm looking for bold, I'm looking for contrast. So you're going to see me go directly into these pails looking for paint, and a lot of times just coming back and going straight to paper. So I'm going to try to abstract as much of this as I can. If I try to come in here and draw every little thing, every little chair and drink and sunglass, it's impossible. It is too much to handle. So what I'm looking to do is I'm looking for dark to give me that contrast. And then I'm just going to kind of give the impression of what is there and simplify it for myself. And what's great, not only does it simplify it for me as the painter, it actually simplifies it for the viewer as well. Makes it much easier to pick up on what you've actually created. All right. And I'm not painting the full shapes of these things either. I'm just kind of going in, making the marks I need, and then I'm, giving the impression of some legs. I'm going to give this person maybe a little bit of a jacket there. Coming in my burnt sienna. Putting a face there. And then I'm going to come through here and do maybe some table legs and things. Not too much. Come back into my burnt sienna here. I'm going to let this bleed down into the figure we have over there. But it looks so nice having those dark figures kind of cut into that dark shadow over there. All right, let's see. I wanted to put the impressions of a few windows on this building here that's in shadow. And I need to do it while it's still wet. And it may be too wet. But we're gonna, yeah, I think it is a bit too wet. We'll see. I'll put a couple of marks there and we'll see what happens. I've got let's do this. I'm gonna take this and do some highlights there for some roofs and things. Okay. Maybe create a little highlight there. See if I can't just pull a line or something. I wanted to give the impression of some tables and things under that umbrella. Tell you what we're going to do. I'm going to take a little of that dirty paint there. We're going to, oops, that's a little bit too warm. I want to have it come over and bleed right into our shadow over here. Something like that. Dab that out just a touch. Okay, let's work on our cars. Now, I've purposely left the windshield and the right side as the white part of the paper because that is going to be where our light is hitting. It should give us a pretty dramatic effect. Now, what I'm going to do to prepare, I'm going to take a little water on my brush and just touch the bottom lines of those windshields. I kind of want our pigment to bleed up just slightly. And again, I'm going to be going very thick with this pigment. We're going to do the one on the left, a yellow. I've got yellow ochre here, and I'm going straight from that pail right into the car. And then as I move my way lower on the vehicle, we get darker and darker. I'm going to just pull pure neutral tint. Okay? All right. Now I need to have on the right side of the car, I've got to have room for some tires, right? We'll do that. We'll join them up, and hopefully, if I can get that tire just a little bit lower. I may have pulled that down just a little bit too far, but that's okay. Again, the impression is already there. The car does not have to be perfect. What matters is that beautiful contrast we get from the light of the buildings around it, the windshield, and then that very dark contrasting body of the car. Now, just looking here. I'm going to come in here. I'm going to add just a darker roof line on these buildings, just because it would be slightly darker right under the roof. I'm going to add a couple of little chimneys and things as well. Okay, that looks good. All right, let's do the shadow for that car. And again, the shadow on our building, or the shadow from our building over there, is very cool. I've got to follow that same rule as I come over here. So I'm going to keep this nice and cool and just bring it straight across. I'm going to keep it nice and thin there. All right. And now I've got some white watercolor here. This is Chinese white. Go straight into that pail. Oops. I'm going to put a little dab right on the front of that car to make some headlights there. And I think that looks really nice. All right, I've got my flat brush in my hand. I want to darken slightly the bottom of our shadow. And you'll notice I'm just kind of jumping around here. I'm just squinting and trying to keep my eyes peeled for what's too light, what's too dark. Again, I'm not really that concerned with color. It's all about light versus dark. Put a window here. 2 windows up there maybe. All right, let's do this other car. Now, I don't want to do, you know what, we did that. A warm car, let's do this one a cool car. Let's go right in for some Cerulean. Just a little bit of that pure paint on the top there. I don't want to make it too, you got to be careful with some colors. They almost come off as cartoonish if you come in too bold without neutralizing it a little bit. Okay, let's go. I've got pure neutral tint on the brush now. I'm going to do that same thing we did. We'd have a little dark tire here, a little dark tire here. Connect them. Pull it down just a little bit there in the front. We pull that one down just a little bit. And let's do our shadow. I've already got a cool mixture together, so it should be pretty easy. And you know what's great is we're going to join it right into the back of that car. Yeah, that looks excellent, excellent, excellent. All right, I'm going to add just a slight top line to our car here, just a little one, just to help frame it up, I think. Okay, that looks very good. Let's do this figure over here. They are in the nice bright sunshine, so let's try to keep them somewhat brighter. I'm going to put that, well, that white paint's not very bright, but put a little bit on there. I'm going to grab some water with my brush and just water up their body area. Grab a little of that burnt sienna. I'm going to make sure to pull it down into their torso so it can kind of bleed out, and then I'm going to use the lower half of their body to help kind of frame the edge of that car. Oops, put my fingerprint on there. Well, that's okay. All right, that looks very nice. All right, what else do we want to do? What else? I definitely want to add a few more figures here, I think. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to punch them in there right like that. All figures is it is a blob with 2, I don't really like, well, all a figure is it's a blob with 2 sticks coming out the bottom and another little small blob on top. That's all it is. I'm just suggesting that there's some more people back there. Grab a little more of that burnt sienna. Put some faces on them. Yep. That looks nice. Let's see, what else do I want to do? Oh, I'm going to add a dark line for the bumper on that car there. And, what else? Just scratching that shadow a little bit. I kind of want to make this figure over here a little bit bolder. Maybe throw some red on there. Yeah, I think that looks nice. All right. Now what we're going to do is we're going to start just adding some little bits to our painting here. We just want to break up our shapes a little bit. And I'm just suggesting there's maybe some more windows back there. Let's pull this shadow over a little bit. Okay. And I almost forgot, I've got a figure here that I want to do that's completely in shadow right now. I'm going to have to do that figure after this is dried. All right, I'm still looking around here. What about adding some windows over here? We talked about that. Yeah, maybe something like that. What else? What else? Maybe I'll create a shadow here. Does that look good? I don't think so. We'll leave that out. Add some little darker bits and things up here. All right. And again, you don't have to really draw anything. I'm just kind of putting my brush to the paper. I'm trying to create more of an abstract impression and to show what's going on here. You know what I may do though? I'm just looking around. I wonder if the dark line on this side of the building help kind of say that that's in shadow or something. Yeah, I don't think that's too bad. Do that, and I've got to be careful. I want to darken the roof line underneath this building a little bit, but I have to be careful and remember that it's in the distance, so I shouldn't have it as dark as my things up here. Okay, so far I really like how this is coming along. I think it looks great. I'm going to draw just some kind of perspective lines here. I think this is coming along very nicely. Yeah. What we're going to do next is we're going to let this dry completely, and then I'm going to come back and we're going to add a few more extra darks. I think you'll be surprised at how light this stuff dries. So we'll be right back. All right, we are back and we're going to finish this painting up. Now, I had mentioned earlier that there's a figure over here in the dark part of our shadow, and I couldn't really work on them because that was all wet. So I'm going to stick some of that white watercolor in there, and we're going to build this figure up. I want to give them a jacket as well. You'll notice, again, I'm almost using pure paint here. Okay, that looks nice. Let's grab some of that burnt sienna and kind of pull that down there. Yeah, I think that looks very nice. All right. What else do we want to add? I'm going to darken the bumper line on the front of that car and that car. I'm also going to add a few darker areas to these windows, I think. Just kind of dry brush them in a little bit. I don't want that back window to be a little bit lighter just because it's further in the distance. Yeah, I guess I really want some darker windows on this building. Maybe add just a fine line on that umbrella, just to block it in a little bit. Anything else I want to add here? Before we go in and add some gouache, I'm going to try to stick some kind of headlights on those cars. Yeah, I think that looks pretty good. So I think we're going to go for it and add those gouache highlights that I like so much. I think everything else looks okay back there. Maybe just a vertical line or two. It's hard to always catch myself doing a little bit too much to the painting. And maybe one other thing I want to do is I want to pull kind of a reflection shadow down for this gentleman. Just because he's not in direct light, so his shadow really wouldn't be a direct correspondence of the light moving right to left, because he's not in it. He's essentially in a I guess a void. So I'm going to treat his reflection more like or his shadow more like a reflection. I hope that made sense. All right. Let's add the gouache highlights and sign our work, and then we'll be done. All right. As always, I've got just some regular old titanium white gouache. And for those of you that don't know, this is just a really useful tool to give your, just fixing the end of my brush a little bit here, to give your characters and other bits and pieces of your subject a little bit of a separation between what's behind them, especially if they're in the dark. But it can really help pop everything out. And it is one of those kind of best kept secrets of a lot of these professional watercolor artists. Well, I shouldn't say secret, but it's one of the things that they do that not many amateurs do, and it makes a huge difference. And as you can see already, especially for a figure like this, that's in the shadow, it's a dark figure against a dark background. I've got to have something to kind of help pull that figure out. I don't want to really mess with the headlights. Maybe I'm just throwing in some little, maybe there's a table or something there, a vertical line or something. Just throwing in a couple of little kind of feeler dots with the with that gouache. It does really help. Okay, I think that looks nice. Let's sign our paper, or our picture here, and let's talk about what we did well and what we maybe did not do so well. Overall, off the bat, I'll say I'm fairly pleased with this. I think this turned out really well. Doing paintings in direct light is a little bit of a weakness of mine that I've been wanting to work on. And so, I'm going to give this guy a tie. It's always hard not to when I have that, any red or orange on the brush. It just is such a vibrant color. It's hard to not stick it on the paper. All right, let's take the tape off and see what we've got. Peel that up. Yeah, I think this looks very, very nice. Very, very nice. Okay, let's start off with the bad first. Or not the bad, but where I could have maybe done something different. I think maybe for these cars' headlights, I would have maybe liked to cut around them to give a little bit more of that white paper showing through. I think that maybe could have looked a little nicer. I would have liked the back of this shadow here on the back edge of this building to blur in a little bit more, just to help push some depth into the painting. Sometimes if you end up with these perfect, like I've got a really hard, nice line here, and I've got a hard line back here, it doesn't read very well. You've got to have sharp, dark images up front and lighter, kind of faded shapes in the back. That's what gives depth to your work. But other than that, I don't have much to complain about. I think this little abstract area with the people under the umbrella, I think that turned out really nicely. Our cars look good. I think this figure looks good as well. Yeah, overall very pleased. So if you stuck with me to the end, I really appreciate it, and I hope you learned something. Consider subscribing and keep on painting.